The film begins with a former Marine named Terry, who is riding his bike on his way to pay bail for his cousin Mike to get him out of jail. Suddenly, a police car appears behind him and crashes into him, causing Terry to fall to the ground. Two officers step out of the police car and start beating him, telling him that they had been chasing him for a while and had tried to stop him, but he refused, forcing them to hit him. Terry is shocked and tells them he did nothing wrong, but the officers ignore his words, stating that they receive a report about a stolen bike and suspect that he is the thief. Terry is baffled by the accusation and insists that he didn't steal anything, but the officers ignore him and start searching him. They find a bag containing $36,000 in cash. At that moment, they accuse him of drug trafficking, arguing that no ordinary person carries such an amount unless they are involved in illegal activities. Terry responds that there is no law preventing him from carrying that much money and explains that the cash is for his cousin's bail, as Mike was wrongfully arrested in a drug case he had nothing to do with. Terry goes on to say that he sold his car and his share of his restaurant to gather the money, emphasizing that he has no connection to drug dealing. He adds that the bail required for his cousin is $10,000, and the remaining amount is intended for a business venture with Mike after his release. However, the officers dismiss his explanation and tell him that they will let him go, but they will confiscate all of his money. They inform him that he can reclaim it later through legal procedures since they suspect the cash was obtained unlawfully. Terry pleads with them to let him take $10,000 while they keep the rest, as he urgently needs to pay the bail before his cousin is transferred to state prison. The officers firmly refuse his request and seize the entire amount, handing him a receipt for the confiscation before leaving. Terry is left in shock, not knowing how to handle the situation, especially since his cousin's transfer to another prison is imminent if the bail isn't paid immediately. Later, Terry goes to the city courthouse, where he meets an employee named Elliot and asks him to intervene and delay his cousin's transfer so he can gather the bail money. However, Elliot tells him that nothing can be done, as the decision has already been made, and Mike will be moved to state prison to serve the remainder of his sentence. At that moment, a trainee lawyer named Summer overhears the conversation and takes Terry to a cafe to learn more about his situation and try to help him. Terry explains how the officers mistreated him and unjustly took his money. Summer then reveals that his cousin, Mike, had worked with the government and helped them arrest a major drug dealer. However, the police in this city later framed Mike and sent him to jail unjustly. She explains that the real problem is that the drug dealer's men are in the state prison, waiting for Mike's arrival to take revenge and kill him. This makes it crucial to post bail as soon as possible before he is transferred. Summer further reveals that the city is deeply corrupt and struggling with extreme poverty, which is why the officers targeted his money to help pay off the city's debts. She warns him that winning a case against the police is nearly impossible and that it could take years to recover his money. Even if he files a lawsuit, he is unlikely to win. She advises him to find a way to gather $10,000 as quickly as possible to post bail and promises to try delaying Mike's transfer to state prison. Terry thanks her and then leaves. Terry then calls his restaurant partner, Lou, and asks him for a temporary loan of $100,000. Lou agrees but asks for some time to gather the money. That night, Terry spends the night in the woods, and the next morning, he heads to the city police station, where he sits down with Officer Jess. He tells her what the officers did to him, shows her a picture of the report he has, describes the officer who took his money, and mentions that his name is Mason. At that moment, Jess becomes tense and asks Terry to wait for a moment before going to call Mason. She informs him that someone has filed a complaint against him. Mason gets angry and starts arguing with Terry, then orders him to leave immediately before he gets himself into trouble. However, Terry refuses to leave without getting his money back. At that moment, the precinct's commander, Byrne, arrives, takes a look at the report Terry has, and tells him that it is invalid and that they did nothing illegal. Byrne then tells Terry to leave quietly and stop the recording he has been running before he causes himself more trouble. At this point, we discover that Terry has been recording their conversation to expose their corruption. Terry remains calm and tells Byrne that he is not there to cause problems. He just needs his money to bail his cousin out of jail. He then offers Byrne a deal. You will take only $100,000 and leave the rest. Byrne agrees, but tells Terry to meet him the next day at a specific location, where he will have the chance to see his cousin and pay the bail before he is transferred to state prison. Terry thanks him and leaves, feeling reassured, unaware that Byrne is just as corrupt as the other officers he has dealt with. The next morning, Terry arrives at the agreed meeting place, but Byrne coldly tells him that he was 3 minutes late, so they had no choice but to transfer his cousin to state prison. Byrne informs him that the transport van has just left, but he might still be able to see him before he arrives at the prison. Terry, furious, rides his motorcycle at full speed, chasing after the transport van. When he catches up, he knocks on the window so his cousin can see him, then tells him not to worry and promises to get him out of prison as soon as possible. Terry then meets with Summer and tells her everything that happened. He asks her what he should do now. Summer tells him that the only solution is to pay the bail. Terry immediately calls his restaurant partner to ask about the money transfer, but Lou shocks him with bad news. He tells Terry that the police raided the restaurant and took all the money he had. Terry instantly realizes that Byrne was behind this and nearly loses his mind, not knowing what to do next. Meanwhile, Byrne orders his men to look into Terry and gather all possible information about him. Jess takes on the task, but at that very moment, Terry storms into the police station, furious. Byrne steps out to meet him with a calm demeanor and asks why he is there. Terry reminds him of the deal they made and demands to know why he broke it. Byrne coldly responds that he does as he pleases and does not take orders from someone beneath him. At that moment, Jess finishes her research on Terry and tells Mason that Terry was a former Marine, an expert in hand-to-hand combat, and the strongest and most well-known soldier in his class. His name is even famous on the internet due to his reputation. Mason immediately grows anxious for Byrne's safety, pulls out his gun, and rushes outside, while Byrne orders Terry to leave immediately. Quickly, Terry snatches the gun from Byrne and holds him tightly to prevent his escape. He then delivers a powerful blow to Mason, causing him to drop his weapon. After securing Byrne again, Terry issues a warning to all the officers in the room, threatening to eliminate the commander if anyone dares to intervene. Everyone freezes in place, too afraid to act. Terry then forces Byrne and Mason inside the station and orders Jess to handcuff them. Without hesitation, she complies. Terry then instructs Jess to retrieve his $100,000 from inside the station. He follows her in and, to his surprise, discovers a massive stockpile of weapons, an illogical sight for a regular police station. Realizing that these weapons are stolen and that the entire precinct is corrupt, he formulates a plan. He orders Jess to escort him out as if she has arrested him, ensuring that no one outside will interfere. Jess agrees and takes him to a police vehicle, driving him to the location where he will pay his cousin's bail. When Summer sees the money Terry has obtained, she questions what he did to get it. He responds that he has decided to sacrifice himself and go to prison instead of his cousin. Moments later, officers storm in, violently arrest Terry, and take him to a medical examiner for a checkup. The doctor confirms that he is completely uninjured. Terry resigns himself to his fate, believing that he is on his way to prison. However, unexpectedly, an officer arrives and informs him that the commander wants to see him. Terry is taken to Byrne, who coldly informs him that someone inside the prison stabbed his cousin to death. Byrne then hands Terry all of his money and tells him that he has arranged a car for him to leave the city. He warns Terry that if he ever returns or tries to investigate them again, they will eliminate him. Devastated, Terry goes to see his cousin's lifeless body, breaking down in sorrow before ultimately deciding to leave the city. On his way out, he meets with Summer, who helps him escape. As they travel, she shares shocking findings from her research into Byrne's past. She discovered that Byrne and his officers have been falsely imprisoning innocent people like Mike and others, holding them for exactly 90 days before demanding exorbitant bail fees for their release. The strange part is that every prisoner is detained for precisely 90 days. Summer questions the reason behind this pattern, but Terry, consumed by grief, no longer cares. He has lost all hope after his cousin's death. The next night, Summer returns home after a long day, but but wakes up in the middle of the night to strange noises. She gets up, feeling dizzy, and when she looks at the sink, she finds a heroin syringe. Looking at her arm, she realizes that someone injected her while she was asleep. Panicked, she immediately understands that the police are behind this. They know she is investigating their corruption. She quickly calls Terry and asks him to come help her. When Terry arrives, he finds her conscious, but insists on taking her to the hospital to ensure she is safe. However, she refuses, explaining that the police did this to destroy her life, get her fired, and take her daughter away, who lives with her ex-husband. At this moment, we learn that Summer was once a drug addict, but has been clean for years. With no record of relapse, she was able to secure her job at the courthouse. The next day, when she arrives at court, she is met by a judge who informs her that someone has filed a complaint, accusing her of returning to drug use. He then orders her to take an immediate drug test to verify the claim. Summer immediately realizes that Byrne was the one who filed the report against her. She undergoes a drug test while completely devastated, and unfortunately, the result comes back positive, leading to her losing custody of her daughter. Meanwhile, Terry is on his way out of the city, but he is surprised when Mason blocks his path, reminding him that he had warned him not to return. Mason tries to attack him, but Terry manages to immobilize him using a stun gun and quickly escapes. Afterwards, Terry calls Summer to check on her. She tells him what happened and announces that she is packing her things to leave the city because staying there has become too dangerous for her. Terry gives her the address of his old restaurant and asks her to meet him there. In the evening, Summer arrives at the restaurant to find Terry injured. His friend Lou takes care of his wounds, then leaves them alone to talk. Terry and Summer sit together, trying to figure out the mystery behind the police's insistence on holding prisoners for exactly 90 days before releasing them with huge bail amounts. Summer suggests they ask Elliot, as he might be the only one who knows the reason. When they confront him, Elliot refuses to speak out of fear of losing his job, but tells them that the judge is the one who knows everything. They go to the judge's house and ask him to confess the truth. He reveals that Byrne was involved in an accidental killing case that led to the deaths of several people, causing the city to go bankrupt. He was ordered to pay a huge amount as compensation, and the only solution for him to keep his position was to frame innocent people, hold them for 90 days, and then demand exorbitant bail amounts for their release. This way, Byrne managed to raise money to pay off his debts and bribe the officers to keep them silent. The judge adds that the police are required to record arrests, both audio and video, and the court has the right to review these recordings to ensure the safety of the detainees. However, the law stipulates that after 90 days, these recordings are automatically erased, preventing the court from exposing the police's corruption. For this reason, they were careful to ensure that the detention period never exceeded 90 days, so their crimes wouldn't be uncovered. The judge also reveals that all the recordings are stored in a secret room inside the court. Terry and Summer head to the court, where they manage to steal the recordings that prove the police's corruption. However, they discover that the police officers had set the place on fire to destroy the evidence. At that point, Summer asks Terry to go ahead to the car while she enters the judge's office to retrieve her drug test result. Unfortunately, the police see her and arrest her. Terry is furious, but manages to keep his composure and devises a plan to save her. He ambushes a lone officer, ties him up, and then uses the officer's radio to communicate with the rest of the police officers, threatening that he won't release their colleague unless they release Summer. He also tells them that he has the recordings that will expose their corruption and demands that they meet him at sunrise the next day. The next morning, all the police forces are waiting for Terry. From a distance, one of the officers notices a car parked far off and thinks that Terry is inside it. The officer quickly heads toward the car, but he's shocked to find that the person inside is his kidnapped colleague, not Terry. Meanwhile, Terry has stealthily infiltrated the police station and boldly crashes into the building with his car. As soon as he sees Byrne, he attacks him directly without hesitation. Afterward, he approaches Jess, telling her that he knows she isn't corrupt but is forced to work with them under threat. He asks for her help to save Summer. Jess pretends to agree, but suddenly betrays him by raising her weapon and ordering him to to leave the station immediately. Terry exits to find all the police officers waiting for him, led by Mason, who confronts him with a mocking smile, then informs him that he injected Summer with a drug overdose, and she only has minutes left before she dies. Mason raises his weapon to kill Terry, but at that moment, one of the officers, named Eve, collapses and refuses to accept what's happening. She tries to intervene, but Burns suddenly emerges from the station and shoots Eve in the foot. Terry takes advantage of the chaos, quickly pulls Eve to safety, using her as a human shield, and begins to fight off the police officers, managing to take down a large number of them. After a fierce battle, Terry successfully reaches the police car, takes Eve and Summer with him, and speeds away from the scene. In the final moments, he manages to save Summer by giving her the antidote, miraculously saving her life. In an unexpected twist, Jess crashes into one of the police cars that was chasing Terry, and it becomes clear that her conscience has finally woken up, so she decides to help him. At this point, everyone realizes that Terry had turned on the car's camera and recorded everything Byrne and his men had done, both audio and video. In the end, Jess arrests Byrne on charges of corruption. A few minutes later, Terry arrives at the hospital to treat Summer, then returns to take the recording device and heads to the state police, where he hands them the undeniable evidence that exposes Byrne and his gang's corruption completely. If you love movies and movie recaps, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more. Hit like if you enjoyed the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.